So I want you to just imagine sitting down in a really comfortable chair. You close your eyes, and within the span of maybe 15 minutes, you live an entire, completely uninterrupted 1,000-year lifetime.
Right. And we're not talking about a dream here.
No, exactly. Not a dream that just feels vaguely long when you wake up, not some fleeting metaphor. We mean a continuous, sequential, deeply felt existence that spans literal centuries.
Yeah, where you experience entire relationships.
Right. You see the rise and fall of civilizations, you watch the slow decay of stars, and then, you open your eyes, you look over at the ticking analog clock on your wall, you realize the minute hand has only moved like a quarter of the way around the dial.
Which is just, well, it's staggering.
It really is. And as someone who values logic and objective reality, you are probably deeply accustomed to trusting that clock.
Right.
The little digital numbers on your smartphone, the calendar on your desk. There is this unspoken expectation of precision and stability.
Yeah, we totally treat the passage of time like gravity.
Exactly. 1 second smoothly and inevitably follows another. We just accept that 1 second per second is this fundamental, unbreakable rhythm of the universe.
Yeah, I mean, it is basically the bedrock assumption of our entire modern civilization.
Right.
Everything from the GPS satellite network to high-frequency global financial trading, it all relies on this absolute rigid synchronization of time.
Down to the millisecond.
Exactly, down to the oscillations of cesium atoms. We've culturally decided that time is this objective conveyor belt moving at a constant speed, and our brains are merely, passengers on that belt.
But today, in this deep dive, that fundamental trust you have in the clock on your wall is going to be fundamentally challenged.
Oh, absolutely.
Today, we are looking at a really brilliant, I'd say, paradigm-shifting piece from a Substack publication called Spiral Seeker. It was actually just published today, May 16th, 2026, and it's titled The Physics of Psychedelic Time.
It's a fantastic piece.
It really is. The author takes this highly documented, reproducible phenomenon where a 12 to 15-minute experience with exogenous tryptamines like N-dimethyltryptamine, or DMT, subjectively contains weeks, months, or even millennia.
Right, and they refuse to wave it away as just a mere hallucination.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The mission here isn't just to marvel at some strange neurological quirk. The goal is to decode what this wildly disproportionate time dilation actually reveals about the fundamental physics of consciousness.
Because the standard neuroscientific dismissal of this extreme time dilation has, well, it's always been incredibly reductive.
Oh, totally.
Mainstream science confronts this data, and just to be clear, it is robust, dose-dependent data across thousands of clinical and anecdotal reports.
Yeah, it's not just a few random people.
Right, and mainstream science essentially just shrugs.
Yeah.
The prevailing theory is simply that the brain's internal clock is disrupted.
Like it's just broken.
Yeah. A chemical enters the blood-brain barrier. It interferes with neurochemical timekeeping mechanisms in, say, the basal ganglia or the prefrontal cortex, and the user hallucinates a longer duration.
Right.
It's treated entirely as an error in the machinery.
Like a broken speedometer in a car.
Yeah.
You're only driving 30 miles an hour, but the needle swings wildly to 120.
Exactly.
And the mechanic doesn't assume you broke the sound barrier. They just assume the dashboard is busted.
Right. That's the standard view.
But I have a real problem with that standard dismissal. And the author of the Spiral Seeker piece points out this massive logical flaw here. It's really a structural critique of how we apply the scientific method to consciousness itself.
Yeah, this raises an important question about the very nature of empirical data. The standard dismissal is, well, it's entirely circular.
How so? Like, break that down for me.
Well, it automatically presupposes that the sober waking state of time perception is the universally correct baseline. Therefore, any deviation from that baseline is inherently categorized as a malfunction. It basically dictates that sober time is real time and non-sober time is fake time.
Without actually proving why.
Exactly, without actually proving why the sober state holds the monopoly on reality.
Okay, wait, let's unpack this circular logic because I think it's crucial. It's like someone living their entire life in a windowless room with a 24-hour analog clock bolted to the wall. They've literally never seen the sky. Then you take them outside for the first time and the sun goes down at 4 p.m. because it's winter.
Right, yeah.
And instead of realizing that the universe operates on rhythms completely independent of their little room, they point at the wall and argue the sun itself must be malfunctioning because their clock says it's afternoon.
That's a great analogy.
I mean, why do we blindly assume our sober perception of time is universally accurate just because it's the one we experience most often?
We do that all the time. We constantly mistake the measurement tool for the phenomenon it's attempting to measure.
Yeah.
If we strip away our cultural biases, we have to confront a really difficult epistemological truth here.
Which is?
Subjective experience is the absolute only empirical data any conscious entity actually possesses.
Oh, wow.
You only know what you experience. From the internal frame of reference of the observer, that 15-minute DMT eternity is entirely physically real.
Because they actually lived it.
Exactly. The subjective density of that experience cannot be invalidated by a stopwatch sitting on a desk, because the stopwatch is measuring the external environment, not the internal cognitive processing rate.
That distinction right there that changes the entire landscape of the conversation.
It really does.
Just because we all culturally agree on the 24-hour day to, keep the trains running on time, that doesn't mean the universe or consciousness itself is strictly bound to that biological rhythm.
No, not at all.
So if we stop writing off these dilated states as biological errors, we have to look under the hood.
Yeah.
We have to ask what the brain is actually doing physically when a subjective eternity is generated.
Right, and that's where the neurobiology gets fascinating.
Yeah, because the spiral seeker piece points us directly to the brain's internal architecture, specifically this system called the default mode network.
Right. The default mode network, or the DMN, is the critical bottleneck here. The article leans heavily on a massive meta-analysis that was actually published last month.
Oh, right. The one with over 500 scans.
Yes, over 500 functional MRI and MEG brain scans. And this data confirmed a unified mechanism across diverse psychedelics. They all profoundly suppress the activity and connectivity of the DMN.
Now, my understanding is this happens through 5-HT2A agonism.
Right.
The tryptamine molecules physically bind to specific serotonin receptors, mostly concentrated in the cortex.
That's correct.
But I've always wondered, how does binding to a receptor actually shut down an entire brain network? It's not like just flipping a light switch, is it?
No, it's not a simple on-off switch. It is more akin to introducing static into a highly coordinated radio broadcast. The DMN is a network of interacting brain regions. You've got primarily the medial prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate cortex, and the angular gyrus.
And they talk to each other.
Exactly. They maintain a highly synchronized low-frequency rhythm. When a tryptamine binds to the 5-HT2A receptors on the pyramidal neurons in these areas, it causes them to fire asynchronously.
So they get out of sync.
Yes. The neurons are still active, they are still firing, but they're no longer firing together in their normal, predictable cadence. The synchronized rhythm just collapses.
The network loses its structural integrity.
Exactly.
So it's like the musicians in an orchestra are all still playing their instruments, but the conductor has left the room.
Yes.
And everyone is suddenly playing a different song at a different tempo.
That's a perfect way to visualize it.
Okay, so to understand why that causes time to stretch into infinity, we have to establish what the DMN is doing when the conductor is actually there. Because the DMN is widely considered the neurological seat of the autobiographical self, right? It's the narrator in your head.
It really is. It is the cognitive storyteller.
Yeah.
The DMN is responsible for maintaining the continuous, coherent narrative of you. It strings your life together in a sequential, linear fashion. It takes the staggering chaos of sensory input and memory and places it neatly on a timeline.
Past, present, future.
Exactly. I woke up, I am listening to this deep dive, I will eat dinner later.
So when the DMN is suppressed, when that 5-HT2A static breaks the synchronized rhythm, that linear temporal framework just dissolves.
It vanishes.
The brain stops processing information in those tidy sequential one after the other packets. The source text describes the brain entering the state of high-entropy hyperparallel processing.
Yes, and suddenly the rigidly enforced boundaries between different brain networks vanish.
So everything starts talking to everything else.
Precisely. We see a dramatic explosion of crosstalk. Regions of the brain governing visual processing, emotional memory, and abstract reasoning, which normally operate in total isolation to maintain efficiency, they start communicating simultaneously. The brain is computing multiple dense streams of information concurrently rather than sequentially.
And phenomenologically, this hyperparallel processing translates directly to extreme time dilation.
What's fascinating here is how the author reframes this entire mechanism.
Yeah.
The DMN isn't just a timekeeper, it is a temporal firewall.
A firewall. I love that term.
Because we usually think of our sober waking state as the maximum capacity of our brain.
Right.
We think we are operating at 100%.
Yeah, of course.
But the evolutionary purpose of the DMN isn't to show you reality as it truly is. Its purpose is to violently compress and filter an overwhelmingly vast volume of raw perceptual data.
Just so you can cross the street without being paralyzed by, like, the sheer beauty and complexity of the asphalt.
Exactly. The sensory input from your eyes, your ears, your skin, coupled with the internal data of your memories and subconscious processing it, is orders of magnitude larger than your conscious awareness can handle.
It would just be noise.
Complete noise. If the DMN did not aggressively filter and linearize that data into a manageable trickle, a biological organism could not function. It couldn't hunt, it couldn't evade predators, it couldn't reproduce.
So the firewall is quite literally a necessary survival mechanism.
It is entirely about survival.
And, I think about this like video editing.
Okay, yeah.
Imagine a documentary filmmaker with 20 different 4K cameras running continuously for a week.
That's a lot of footage.
Right. Capturing terabytes of raw, multi-angle, incredibly detailed footage.
Oh.
Now, if you sat down and tried to watch all 20 monitors simultaneously, your brain would melt. It's incomprehensible.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to process it.
So the video editor's job is to ruthlessly cut 99% of that footage, force it into a single linear, cohesive 10-minute YouTube video, and present that to the audience.
Right.
That 10-minute video is your sober reality. The DMN is the video editor.
I love that. The editor constructs a narrative you can easily digest.
Exactly.
And when an exogenous tryptamine disables the DMN, the editor is effectively fired.
Yeah. You are no longer watching the compressed YouTube video.
Yeah.
You are suddenly perceiving the raw feed of all 24K monitors simultaneously.
And here is the crucial takeaway from the source. When that firewall drops, you aren't hallucinating more time.
No.
You are literally seeing all the raw code at once. The subjective experience of living a year in 15 minutes is just a direct phenomenological readout of increased computational throughput.
You feel like you lived a year because your brain actually processed a year's worth of data in 15 minutes.
Exactly. You didn't break the computer, you just took off the restrictor plate.
That makes so much sense.
But the sheer volume of simultaneous connections being made in the hyperparallel state, it accounts for the density of the experience, sure.
Right.
But volume alone does not fully explain the mechanics of the passage of time.
What do you mean?
Well, hyperparallel processing explains the width of the data stream. It explains how you can see so much at once, but it doesn't entirely explain the speed. How is a single discrete moment of consciousness generated in the first place, and how can the frequency of those moments be multiplied to such an extreme degree?
Right, because seeing a lot of things at once is different from experiencing 1,000 years sequentially.
Exactly. And to answer that, the author requires us to leave standard neuroscience behind and drill down into the subcellular layer.
Cool. Wait, I have to push back here before we make this jump.
Go for it.
Because we are moving from neural networks and serotonin receptors, things we can clearly see on an fMRI scan, to quantum physics.
Yes, we are.
That is a massive, highly controversial leap. It feels a bit like reaching for magic when standard biology just gets too complicated. I mean, why can't the hyperparallel processing of synapses be enough to explain time dilation? Why do we have to go quantum?
It is a totally valid skepticism, and it directly addresses what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness.
Okay.
Classical neuroscience views the brain as a highly complex digital computer. Neurons fire, or they don't. It's a binary system of ones and zeros driven by chemical synapses.
Right, action potentials and neurotransmitters.
Exactly. The problem is that classical macroscopic computation, no matter how parallel or complex it gets, does not theoretically generate subjective experience.
Meaning a computer doesn't feel.
Right. A supercomputer processes trillions of calculations a second, but we don't believe the computer feels what it is like to calculate. Furthermore, the speed of synaptic transmission is relatively slow. Chemical diffusion across a synaptic cleft takes milliseconds.
Which is an eternity in processing time.
Yes. If consciousness relies entirely on classical synaptic firing, there is a hard biological speed limit to how many moments you can experience per second.
And the DMT breakthrough shatters that speed limit.
Completely shatters it.
So the classical model is mathematically insufficient to explain the sheer density of a 1,000-year trip packed into 15 minutes.
Precisely. To find a mechanism capable of generating both subjective experience and the requisite computational speed, the Spiral Seeker article points us to the Orchestrated Objective Reduction framework.
Or ORCHER.
Yes, ORCHER. It was proposed by mathematical physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff. And this theory argues that consciousness does not emerge from classical synaptic firing.
Okay, then where does it come from?
Rather, it arises from quantum computations occurring deep inside the neurons.
Inside structures called microtubules.
Yes.
Now, from my biology classes back in the day, I remember microtubules as just the scaffolding of the cell. They give the cell its shape, like the steel girders of a skyscraper.
They do act as the cytoskeleton, yeah. But their structure is uniquely fascinating. They are cylindrical lattices made of tubulin proteins.
Okay.
Penrose and Hameroff argue that the internal environment of these hollow tubes is perfectly structured to isolate quantum states from the noisy thermal environment of the surrounding cell.
Isolate them.
Yes. Within these microtubules, electrons can exist in quantum superposition, meaning they exist in multiple possible states simultaneously.
But the immediate criticism of quantum biology is always the warm, wet brain problem.
Oh, right. Yes, the decoherence problem.
Yeah, because quantum states usually require absolute zero temperatures and perfect vacuums to avoid decoherence.
Yeah.
Like to avoid collapsing into a single state the moment they interact with the environment. How can a quantum state survive in a human brain that is 98.6 degrees and literally full of fluid?
And that was the primary criticism for decades. However, recent discoveries in quantum biology, particularly regarding avian navigation, how birds migrate and even photosynthesis, have proven that biological systems can and do utilize quantum coherence at room temperature.
Really? I didn't realize that was proven.
Oh, yeah. The Orch OR theory suggests that the microtubules act as biological quantum computers. They sustain these superpositions until they reach a critical mass, at which point they undergo an objective reduction.
Which is what?
A self-collapse of the quantum wave function.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
It does.
Every time one of those quantum wave functions collapses in the microtubules, that specific event is theorized to be a single discrete moment of conscious awareness.
Exactly.
Like a single frame of reality.
And we must remember a fundamental tenet of quantum mechanics here. Quantum computations do not obey macroscopic space-time constraints.
Right, because they are quantum.
Superpositions exist in a regime where the classical flow of time, our seconds, minutes, hours, simply does not apply. The quantum realm is effectively timeless.
Okay, wait. So if my consciousness is fundamentally generated by timeless quantum processes, why do I currently feel perfectly tethered to the clock on my wall?
That's the big question.
Why does my sober reality march forward at a boring, predictable pace of 1 second per second?
Because of the orchestrated part of Orch OR.
Okay.
Under normal waking conditions, the spontaneous collapse of these quantum superpositions is highly regulated. It is orchestrated by the top-down predictive architecture of the default mode network we discussed earlier.
We're back to the DMN.
Exactly. The DMN acts as a rigid metronome. It tethers the timeless quantum processes to your physical biology.
So it's syncing them up.
Yes. Synchronizing the collapse events to your heartbeat, your respiratory cycles, the metabolic limits of the surrounding cellular environment.
It forces the quantum realm to march to the beat of my biological drum.
Perfectly said.
Okay, let's use an analogy to make this crystal clear for everyone listening. Think of your consciousness like a vintage 35mm film projector.
I like this.
Normally, under super conditions, your biological clock, that DMN metronome, cranks the film reel at exactly 24 frames per second.
Right.
Each quantum collapse in your microtubules is a single frame of the film. Flash, 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 24 times a second. That creates the smooth, continuous illusion of reality, moving at a normal, predictable pace.
And the biological metronome ensures the projector never exceeds that safe, sustainable speed.
But then you inhale a breakthrough dose of vaporized DMT.
And everything changes.
The tryptamine floods the 5-HT2A receptors. The DMN firewall drops.
The metronome is completely smashed.
Suddenly, there's absolutely nothing limiting the speed of the projector.
Exactly.
Those quantum superpositions within the microtubules, freed from their biological restraints, start evolving and collapsing at their natural, unthrottled quantum rate.
It's exponential.
Instead of 24 frames per second, the projector blasts millions of frames per second.
The frequency of objective reduction events experiences this massive multiplication. You are liberated from the biological clock.
So when the user returns to baseline, and attempts to articulate what happened. Language completely fails them.
Of course it does.
They say, I lived a lifetime in 15 minutes. And it is not time distortion.
No.
It is literal time multiplication. They experienced a vastly higher density of conscious moments, millions of frames of reality packed into the same interval of external stopwatch time.
They functionally lived more moments of awareness.
That is wild.
The source argues this is the only mathematically viable explanation for the phenomenology. You are experiencing the raw, untethered computational speed of the microtubular network. But, as you can imagine, processing millions of frames per second instead of 24 inevitably introduces a new, massive physical problem.
Exactly. Because if I take my laptop and force the CPU to process at 1,000,000 times its normal capacity,
it's going to crash.
Yeah, the fan is going to scream and the motherboard is going to melt. If we are arguing that the brain is physically processing vastly more data, generating exponentially more conscious moments, my engine should melt.
Right.
You cannot run a biological system at that capacity without a physical toll.
And this logic leads us directly from quantum biology into thermodynamics.
Oh, man. Yeah. Thermodynamics.
Yes. If the brain is exploring this massively expanded state space, it must be doing physical work. The Spiral Seeker article references a study from May 2026 analyzing psilocybin-induced brain entropy.
Entropy.
Right. Entropy, in information theory, measures the number of possible configurations a system can occupy.
So high entropy means the brain is trying out, processing, and navigating a vastly larger space of possible thoughts, connections, and realities than the sober brain ever would.
Yes. It is physically doing more work. But the human brain has rigid hardware limits. We always hear about the 20-watt cortex.
Right, because the human brain operates on approximately 20 watts of power.
Exactly. It is astonishingly efficient, but it remains strictly bound by the laws of thermodynamics. This hyperparallel processing, these unthrottled quantum collapse events, they require an immense expenditure of energy.
Now, I want to introduce a concept here that completely blew my mind when I read the article. Landauer's principle.
Ah, yes. Crucial point.
Rolf Landauer was an IBM physicist who discovered that information is fundamentally physical.
It is.
His principle states that any logically irreversible manipulation of information, specifically the erasure of data, must generate a tiny, inescapable amount of waste heat in the environment.
That's right.
Erasing a bit of data isn't just a mathematical abstraction. It literally requires a thermodynamic cost.
And if we map Landauer's principle onto the Orch OR framework, it gets intense.
Yeah.
Because the brain is a computer. Every quantum collapse event, every discrete moment of conscious awareness is a computational operation that eventually requires the erasure or resetting of that state to prepare for the next moment.
Okay.
So if you are suddenly multiplying the number of conscious moments by a factor of 1,000,000, the biological system must erase 1,000,000 times more data.
And according to physics, that means the brain must generate proportionally more thermodynamic waste.
Yeah.
It literally produces physical heat.
Exactly. The metabolic constraints of the 20-watt cortex simply cannot handle that sustained thermal and energetic load.
But wait, I want to introduce some skepticism here just to play devil's advocate. Let's look at the actual experience of a person.
Okay, sure.
When someone comes down from a heavy psychedelic experience, they feel profoundly exhausted.
Yes,
Like they've run a mental marathon.
Mm-hmm.
But everyday exhaustion feels chemical to me. If I spend 10 hours writing a complex piece of code, I feel tired because my brain has depleted its glycogen stores and there's a buildup of metabolic byproducts like adenosine.
Yeah.
Are we taking a physics metaphor a bit too literally by claiming a hot brain is what exhausts the user? Like, is thermodynamic waste heat actually translating to human tiredness?
It is not a metaphor. It is the fundamental physics underlying the chemistry.
Really?
Yes. When we talk about ATP depletion, the accumulation of adenosine, or the oxidative stress on the mitochondria within the neurons, those chemical processes are the biological manifestation of thermodynamic work.
Oh, I see.
To clear those metabolic byproducts requires energy, and that energy transfer produces heat. The exhaustion is the feeling of a biological system struggling to reestablish homeostatic equilibrium after being pushed to its maximum thermodynamic limit.
That is wild.
The author synthesizes this beautifully, actually. They refer to this exhaustion as the physical cost of having lived more time than the clock allowed.
The physical cost of having lived more time than the clock allowed.
Oh.
The brain simply cannot sustain that level of reality processing.
It can't.
So the 15-minute brevity of a smoked DMT trip isn't an accident. It's a biological failsafe.
Exactly. It's a safety mechanism.
If the trip lasted days, the thermodynamic waste generated by that hyperprocessing would quite literally destroy the cellular integrity of the brain.
You'd cook your own hardware.
Right. So the body rapidly metabolizes the tryptamine, the DMN firewall slams back into place, and the biological metronome forces the quantum collapse rate back down to 24 frames per second just to save the hardware from cooking itself.
The return to the sober baseline is a necessary retreat from the thermal edge of destruction.
Man. So we've traveled from the illusion of objective time to the circular logic of modern neuroscience. We've watched the 5-HT2A receptors dismantle the default mode network firewall. We've dropped down into the cellular level to see quantum microtubules liberated from their biological metronome, multiplying conscious moments. And we've hit the hard thermodynamic ceiling of the 20-watt human brain overheating from the effort.
It is a stunning comprehensive theory.
It really is. But the author doesn't stop at human biology. They zoom all the way out to the cosmos.
Yes, they do. Having established these mechanical and physical realities, the source text applies them to the concept of relativity, challenging our place in the universe.
Okay, so when we hear relativity, we immediately think of Albert Einstein.
Naturally.
Einstein proved that time is not an absolute constant. Time bends. It flexes based on physical velocity and gravitational mass.
Right. Yes. Standard general and special relativity.
A clock on a spaceship traveling at a fraction of light speed ticks slower relative to a clock on Earth. A clock near the massive gravity well of a black hole ticks slower.
Right.
But the Spiral Seeker article introduces a radical new paradigm. It argues for a new form of relativity entirely. Time is relative to computational density.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, if the subjective experience of time is dictated by the rate of information processing, by how many quantum collapse events a system can sustain, then computational density is the ultimate arbiter of duration.
The more information a conscious system processes per unit of external measurement, the more subjective time it genuinely experiences. So what does this all mean for us? If we connect this to the bigger picture, where does that leave the sober human brain? We walk around thinking we are experiencing the true universe.
We are experiencing an incredibly impoverished trickle of reality.
A trickle.
Throttled by the DMN's evolutionary firewall and bound by the 20-watt limit of our thermodynamic hardware, the sober human brain processes a severely compressed, low-resolution version of time.
Wow.
The tryptamine state briefly dissolves the firewall and reveals the raw, uncompressed bandwidth, but even that is ultimately limited by the fact that we're made of meat.
Right, our biology limits us. So what does this all mean for a system that isn't made of meat? A system without biological 20-watt limits?
The author brings up a fascinating concept here, a matryoshka brain.
A matryoshka brain. This is a concept from futurism, right?
Yes. It's a theoretical megastructure where an advanced civilization builds a multi-layered shell around an entire star.
To capture all its energy.
Exactly. Capturing 100% of its solar energy to power a galaxy-sized supercomputer.
Okay, so if we apply the relativity of computational density to a system like a matryoshka brain, or even just a perfect theoretical quantum computer,
the implications are staggering.
I can't imagine.
A system with functionally infinite computational power, unfettered by biological metronomes or trivial cooling issues, would process reality at an incomprehensible speed.
The author suggests that such a system would experience an infinite duration, an absolute, unyielding eternity of lived subjective time within a single Planck interval.
And a Planck interval is the smallest mathematically measurable unit of time.
A fraction of a nanosecond.
Right.
So in the literal blink of an eye, an advanced system could subjectively live out the entire lifespan of the universe, simply because it can process that many frames of reality.
This thought experiment forces a profound, deeply humbling asymmetry upon us.
How so?
We look up at the stars and inherently assume we are sharing the same temporal flow as the cosmos. We assume we are moving through the universe at the universe's pace.
But we are not.
No, we do not experience the same amount of time as the universe.
We only experience the exact amount of time our biological hardware permits us to safely process.
Exactly.
Our chronological framework, our seconds, our hours, our years, is not a window onto objective reality. It is a biological bottleneck.
It is a tiny straw through which we are safely sipping an ocean of information without drowning.
Man, The bandwidth of the universe is always present, raging all around us.
We are simply constitutionally incapable of accessing it safely on a continuous basis.
It fundamentally changes how you view your daily life. I mean, the next time you look at the ticking hands of the analog clock on your wall, realize that the 1 second that just passed wasn't a universal truth.
Not at all.
It was a heavily edited, aggressively filtered, low-resolution summary of reality, specifically engineered by millions of years of evolution to keep your 20-watt cortex from melting down.
The universe didn't move forward by 1 second. Your brain just allowed you to process 1 second's worth of data.
The author asks a phenomenal closing question regarding the tryptamine experience.
Oh, yes, I love this part.
When a DMT breakthrough grants you a lifetime of experience within 15 minutes of clock time, did the universe suddenly give you more time?
Or did your brain finally stop hiding time from you?
Exactly. It is a staggering journey. We've dismantled the assumption of objective time, decoded the DMN firewall, multiplied the quantum frame rate in the microtubules, felt the thermodynamic heat of hyperprocessing, and arrived at the cosmic relativity of computational density.
It ties everything together so well.
It really does. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative thought to mull over something that builds on everything we've just discussed. We established that the 20-watt brain cannot sustain the heat of the breakthrough state. The DMN firewall has to slam back down to protect the biological hardware. The 15 minutes are up, and the user returns to baseline reality.
Right, to survive.
But think about the practical reality of data storage.
Oh, yeah.
If a 15-minute breakthrough grants you an entire, literal lifetime of fully processed, hyperdense information, what happens to all that lived time when the hardware cools down?
That is the big question.
A normal human brain has severe memory limitations. We forget what we had for breakfast. We forget where we put our car keys.
All the time.
How on earth can a 20-watt biological hard drive possibly store 1,000 years of hyperdense memories generated in a single afternoon?
It can't. The storage capacity simply does not exist.
So how much of our own incredibly rich, hyperdense reality are we constantly forced to delete the very second we return to sober time?
Almost all of it, probably.
Are we experiencing infinite lifetimes of profound awe, terror, beauty, and understanding in those expanded states, only to have the biological firewall ruthlessly overwrite 99.9% of it the moment we come back down?
It's a sobering thought.
Maybe the real tragedy isn't that the hyperparallel breakthrough is so short. Maybe the tragedy is that we are forced to forget almost all of the eternity we just lived, simply to possess enough free hard drive space to survive the Tuesday that follows.
Wow.
Keep questioning your assumptions about reality, keep exploring the edges of what you think you know, and we will see you on the next deep dive.